Halloween Kills is finally here. More of the night Michael came home, and also more of the night from the previous movie. I've seen many complaints about Halloween 2018 for feeling like a part 1, which is funny because this movie doesn't feel like a part 2 at all. This movie not only spends most of its runtime telling you who and what Michael is, it spends most of its runtime reminding you about what happened in the first movie. Now, for a soft reboot, there's a lot of necessary wiggle room to give exposition about past events just in case newcomers are going to see this movie who haven't seen the original. However, that's what the entire previous movie was for, and that's what it was. Fine setup with podcasters who are covering the Haddonfield murders from 40 years ago. They are chasing the story and want to interview Michael and Laurie. But this movie also does that, but times 1,000. This soft reboot overhypes its own original movie in such a hyperbolic way that it may as well have been 9/11. Halloween 2018 was the last time I was optimistic about a soft reboot, specifically in the horror genre. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice.
It fooled me, we can't get fooled again.
Despite liking it at the time, I did say I wished that it had the balls to just be a one-off movie, because along came this movie, which was everything I feared. Proof that these goddamn franchises make the soft reboot, they shove in so much imagery and fan service to tickle your nostalgia hemorrhoid with updated cinematography and sound design and a marketing campaign facade of being some special, amazing new entry into the pre-established story. It's a first fun outing. It then proved that they had no idea what to do with the property. Nostalgia first, questions later. Number 1. I rewatched Halloween 2018 a few months ago, and I wasn't as impressed as I was when I first saw it in the cinema. My second take was, okay, this movie does such a massive job of ignoring all the sequels, takes it all the way back to the beginning, makes a product that feels like the original, as well as Terminator 2, but we cannot do this again. The next movie needs to change up everything. And please, after all this baiting of trying to get Michael to move, talk, do anything,
you feel it, don't you, Michael? You feel the mask. Say something, Michael. Say something.
He spoke to me.
He spoke to you? What did he say?
One word.
Just do something interesting and different with Michael's character. Make all this worth it. Don't just have him be silent again and all the other characters are the ones explaining his character traits, backstory, and motivation. Enter Halloween Kills. Same shit, different sequel. Now, before I get into this, I'm just going to list my only positive. Rather than digitally recreating Dr. Loomis with a crappy CGI model that is way too high definition than how we remember that actor from the 70s, they just got a crew member or someone and just put makeup on him to look like Loomis. Flawless effect.
Officer Hawkins, tell me, what happened in here? Did Michael kill again?
It's become obnoxious with Hollywood digitally de-aging actors just for fan service. Along came Mike Flanagan with Dr. Sleep, and just casted actors that were close enough so that you felt that they were real. No CGI plastic lip flapping young Jack Nicholson with an elderly croaky modern old man voice. In fact, all the scenes that are set during the events of the first movie do a good job at recreating the cinematography and setting. It's almost like this movie could just be the original, but like Michael, it's all a disguise, with nothing behind the mask. When I watched this movie, I was ready for it to do something different after the previous one, but the first few scenes were a massive indicator of the nostalgia pandering nightmare that was about to follow. And just to show you, I'm going to break down the first bunch of scenes. The movie starts with the dumb boyfriend from the previous movie now discovering the horror and finds the cop character that got double-crossed. Fine establishing scene, gets the movie started. Jump back to 1978, moments after Loomis shot Michael. Some cops find him walking around. They all then split up to find him. Now begins what I like to call Remen exposition, when you need to tell the audience about either a previous movie's plot point or a character trait that will come back later in this current story. Just have characters reminisce. These two cops split off and immediately start doing this.
I used to know the guy.
Michael, we were kids.
Yeah? Was he one of those weirdo freaks who used to pluck the wings off butterflies when he was a kid?
Not that I ever saw.
Just killed his sister when he was 6 years old?
Yeah.
This is already a clunky way to start the movie, but fine. Get it out of the way now. Get it out. But what I didn't realize at the time is that this movie is about to keep doing that every 10 minutes. Any chance it gets, it brings up the events of the first movie.
That's the Myers house. That's where it happened. Halloween, 1963.
Remen exposition within a flashback, and thank God he name-dropped the year. They now introduce this vague element to Michael's character.
My mom used to make me go over to his house to play, but he would just spend the whole time staring out of his sister's bedroom window. I always remember thinking, The hell was he looking at over there?
They get to the house, continuity homage with the dog and window. Classic Michael's back to staring out of his sister's window. Then they have a scuffle with Michael, a cop kills a cop, Loomis shows up and yay! Ends with recreating the shot of young Michael after killing his sister. Cut to the obligatory recreation and length of the original Halloween intro credits with the pumpkins. Then cut to a bar. Everyone's having fun, so let's ruin that with just normal exposition.
They are friends with that crazy lady that almost got killed by Michael Myers.
I heard about that. Laura Stoops or something.
Laura Strode, the one that survived Michael Myers.
And just when that wasn't subtle enough, we are now introduced to Tommy Doyle, aka Dave Davidson.
Okay, I'm looking for a Mr. Dave Davidson. Are you Dave Davidson? No. Okay. Are you David Davidson? Oh, my name's Peter. David Davidson. I'm looking for a David Davidson. David Davidson.
I'm Dave Davidson. Is there a problem? Mr. Davidson? Yes, I am.
And he proceeds to tell this long, spooky recap of the events of the first movie.
40 years ago, a madman escaped from a mental hospital. It was the night before Halloween, and 3 teenage girls were walking home from Haddonfield High. They had sightings, a ghost-like figure creeping right through our town. A man in a white mask, or was it more than a man, who was watching them. Before the night was over, 3 people would be murdered. And in the house next door, there was a babysitter and a young boy, a young girl, and they were brutally attacked by this stalker who had a power beyond any mortal man.
Like we didn't get enough through the flashback scene and all that Remen exposition, let's get it again because legacy character. And then he gets the spotlight to shine on all the other legacy characters who came back with their respective flashbacks.
Wallace, her babysitter, Annie Brackett, was executed that night. And we have Miss Marion Chambers, survived an assault. And Lonnie Elam, Lonnie survived a face-to-face encounter.
Maybe the first Halloween movie? Oh yeah, I named it.
This is for you, Laurie, wherever you are.
Then finally it cuts to Laurie and Fam in the back of the truck. At the 20-minute mark, the sequel finally begins. For 20 straight minutes, you have sat through flashbacks, Remen exposition, and recapping. Laurie sees the fire truck heading towards the burning house. Then we get this epic build-up of Michael squaring off with a bunch of firefighters and proceeds to get himself cancelled on the internet, and then follows up with a lackluster action scene. Then all the characters end up at the hospital. They are all explaining the events of the previous movie, but that's fine, because we're getting their takes on what just happened. They're the main characters after all. But then, even though they verbally explain it all, the movie still has to show us a flashback.
Goodbye, Michael.
It's crazy that this is the second movie in a trilogy because there is so much exposition filler in this film that is probably a 30-minute story on its own. But anyway, now this movie splits into 2 side plots. For the rest of the entire movie, Laurie is just sitting in the hospital bed talking about Michael. The other side plot is the town rallying together to hunt Michael, which I'll get to in a bit. But what's insane about this movie is it's all tell, don't show. When it isn't regurgitating the events of the original movie.
Do you have any idea whose house this was? Michael fucking Myers. He stabbed his sister in the tits.
Yuck.
Right upstairs.
It's overhyping Michael's character with people just talking, and Michael does not do anything new or special. Every scene where Michael kills people honestly just feels like, well, we gotta break up the dialogue with Michael killing. The characters will ramble, Michael shows up and kills them, other characters ramble, Michael shows up and kills them, which becomes stale after the very first scene of Michael killing.
This is for Dr. Loomis.
But let's get into how this movie has its head so far up its own ass that it thinks it's important. Number 2. When I first saw the trailer and it was all about the towns getting together to hunt Michael, my first thought was, alright, I guess that's kind of different. But now in marathoning the originals, I'm now noticing that none of the ideas in this movie are brand new. We've basically seen all of this movie across the entire franchise. It's like Terminator Dark Fate. The whole thing is packaged with imagery from the entire franchise, but repackaged as if it's original. There's a whole mob who gets together in Halloween 4 once Michael starts killing again. The difference is they had a better reason in 4, because the reason in this movie is reach for the sky. Going off of this movie's new continuity setting of ignoring all the sequels after the original second movie, all Michael did was kill 3 kids one night, then sat in prison for 40 years with no signs of aggression or threat of breaking out, which was the point of confusion I brought up in my 2018 review. It made no sense that Laurie would be all Sarah Connor after 40 years, especially with no sign of Michael recreating the events of that one night. But whatever, T2 Sarah Connor is a fun gimmick, and I think the 2018 movie ripped it off fine. But what this movie does is pretend that the events of the first movie was like Hiroshima meets Harvey Weinstein.
It's Michael's gotta be.
I've lived here my whole life.
All of these characters go on about how Michael has filled the town with fear for 40 years, for no reason.
He's infected your family, he's infected my family with grief and fear for 40 years.
Michael Myers has haunted this town for 40 years.
I remember him from 40 years ago.
He killed my daughter 40 years ago.
It was 40 years ago when I was a kid. You protected me.
And they keep describing Michael like some unstoppable killing machine.
And they were brutally attacked by this stalker who had a power beyond any mortal man.
He is an apex predator.
And it's like, really? He only killed 3 kids 40 years ago. Like,
You know what I mean?
it's like I get that they retconned Halloween 2 so they didn't have to do the whole Michael is Laurie's brother connection, but like, that movie had way more shit in it that proves all of these people right. But if you're ignoring 2 and only saying that the first movie happened, like,
You know what I mean?
they told me to forget Halloween 2 onwards, and I did what they asked. But these cunts go on about Michael Myers like there's 10 movies worth of this behavior they're describing, including the remake.
Yeah, I got my bed up here, Huckleberry. The old Huckleberry. So if he come back there, we got something for him.
That's right.
They do this thing early on where they show the 2 people who escape the mental hospital bus. They show the first guy who does not fit Michael's description, but when they show Michael, they focus pull so you miss his face. So Dave Davidson has seen both patients, but just assumes the first one was Michael. Next comes a confusing series of events. One of the new characters notices someone's in their car.
Michael Myers is in the backseat. Go look.
Go look! Oh no!
And so Dave Davidson goes up to the car with his bat, talks to who he thinks is Michael.
Michael.
Then the car drives off and crashes. The car is empty, and it turns out it was this guy who is scared and runs off. Cut to this line.
You rip his mask off, look him in the eye, swing old Huckleberry here. Say night-night.
And then later on, after they had been following Michael's murder trail, they all end up at the hospital. Also at this time, the crazy guy shows up and is asking for help. And so, seeing as this guy does not fit Michael's description at all, tall, silent, ominous, along comes short, pudgy, and scared, and they all react with...
It's Michael.
Now, Tommy Doyle is the one who declares that it's Michael, which sends this crazy mob after him.
Now, the only way to catch him is to play by his own game. The element of surprise. So he thinks you're going one place, then you pop up someplace else.
Now, just trying to wrap my head around the reason he believes it's Michael. He sees this guy's face on the TV at the start. When he approaches the car and calls out who he thinks is Michael, the camera never shows who's behind the wheel. Now, Tommy doesn't know what adult Michael looks like. He could have easily have just seen this guy's photo on the TV, saw his face through the car window, and then jumped to that conclusion when this guy shows up at the hospital. But he says this line.
You rip his mask off, look him in the eye, say night-night.
Now, if it was Michael in the car, he would have had his mask on, which would have made him say that line. But if he saw this dude's face in the car, he wouldn't know Michael was currently wearing a mask. So why I bring up the mask? Oh, because the mask is iconic. Is it now? Because if we were only accepting the first movie's continuity, Michael wore that Shatner mask once, 40 years ago.
For 40 years.
40 years.
And never committed any other violent acts and never wore that mask again. Why would Tommy Doyle assume Michael is wearing that exact same mask 40 years later now that he's broken out?
Not him. Not him, Tommy.
He's always worn a mask, Lee. How do we know it's not him? How do we know, Lee?
But you see, these amazing writers with the lost art of tell don't show actually set up why Tommy just starts jumping to conclusions and instantly starts spouting out why it's Michael. After how much these characters ram the exposition down your throat, there is this one particular moment at the start of the film.
All shit happening today, 2 homicides at gas stations.
Stop it. We don't even know if he was on the bus.
Tommy, you're so paranoid.
It's not even a blink and you'll miss it moment, because it's buried in the sound mix with everyone else in the bar. And it's also dialogue being spoken by characters who haven't been visually introduced yet. Now, Was this in the script? Or was this dialogue recorded later in post-production when they realized Tommy needed a smidge of information to jump to the conclusion that it's Michael? Yeah, I think I might go with the latter, because the rest of this movie doesn't even know the definition of the term subtle.
It's Halloween. Everyone's entitled to one good scare.
This is the frustrating shit about this trash script, is no, it doesn't include any sequel past 2, but it acts like they are all canon. But he didn't do shit in the first movie to warrant living in fear for 40 years. But anyway, this angry mob with zero logic or reason decide to chase after this crazy guy. Laurie catches on that it isn't Michael, tries to tell them all, but they don't listen, to which she screams, They trap him in this room, it's playing the stupid sappy music to make you feel sad, and then this guy breaks out and jumps to his death. And this is the lesson.
Now he's turning us into monsters.
This whole side plot is just a metaphor of mob mentality. I cannot believe adults wrote this script. Mob mentality and internet cancel culture are fucking annoying in real life. So who wants to see a metaphor of it in a Halloween movie? They show us from the get-go that it isn't Michael, so we know it's not Michael. So then you have to sit through all these dumbass pointless scenes and feel nothing, because you are watching idiots be dumb. And just to show you how much screen time is dedicated to this shit show, I highlighted it all in brown on my timeline. Had this been an ambiguous subplot, when the audience doesn't know if it's Michael or not, we could have also felt the shock of them being wrong.
But the boogeyman is coming for me, and he's coming for you. But he's not gonna get us. Not this time, because we will never succumb to fear.
Does this change anything? No. They feel bad for 1 second and then go back to hunting Michael.
You took my daughter to chase a killer and an innocent man is dead. None of us are innocent.
I gotta keep trying. But if I go down, I'm gonna go down swinging.
So, this entire subplot is the biggest waste of time. And you know it's pointless to follow so early on that it makes you feel nothing as it plays out. I went into this movie hoping there would be an actual interesting thing added to Michael's character, to make all the nostalgia pandering worth it. But instead we get 50% recapping the fucking first Halloween with the exposition of a Tubi movie, 50% overhyping Michael as a threat for literally no reason based on the continuity they established.
I always thought Michael Myers was flesh and blood, just like you and me. But a mortal man could not have survived what he's lived through. The more he kills, the more he transcends into something else impossible to defeat. That is the true curse of Michael. You can't defeat it with brute force.
If we only knew then what we know now.
Number 3. The only thing that kept me interested in where this soft reboot was going were things they kept pushing in the previous one. If you want to ignore the original second movie onwards so you don't have to be a slave to certain plot points, fine. I'll accept it if you got something interesting to follow that up with. But what I thought was interesting in the 2018 movie is they kept referring to Michael as a serial killer. And on top of that, kept pushing this tease of Michael speaking.
He can speak. He just chooses not to.
Say something, Michael. Say something. Say something. Say something, Michael. Say something!
I've never heard him speak, you see. In spite of my encouragements, he remains unresponsive.
He spoke to me.
He spoke to you?
He spoke to me.
What did he say?
One word.
What was the word?
Boy band. Boy band. Boy band.
This interested me because no other Halloween sequel, aside from the remake, had bothered to humanize Michael and hint that there could be something more interesting behind the mask. To which fans will now comment, actually, Michael is just an animal. He's a killer with no motive. He's a force of nature. Now this is a justification that John Carpenter himself has peddled, which I sort of find a bit frustrating. Most of the sequels, he has a motive of killing his bloodline, and that motive was literally written by John Carpenter. But if you just look at the original movie without any sequels, there is still a motive with his sister Judith. Steals her tombstone and lays one of the dead girls in front of it. So there's still a motive of sorts there. And this whole thing about Michael is just a force of nature with nothing going on behind the eyes. Michael has done so much intentional shit throughout this entire franchise that contradicts that. Remember when he put on the white sheet and glasses to trick the girl into thinking it's her boyfriend? Why bother? Just walk in and kill her.
He is an apex predator.
Why make this whole display with the sister's tombstone?
He's a 6-year-old boy with the strength of a man and the mind of an animal.
The thing I've always liked about Michael is there's clearly shit going on behind those eyes. These movies and the fans love to say Michael has no motive. Yet every movie he's stalking someone intentionally. He has to wear the exact same specific mask. Also, you want to bloody talk motive? LL Cool J and H2O. He's the only character Michael has ever intentionally let live. Tricked him into getting past the security fence, then stalked him at one window, then followed him to another window, but then left him alone. And he still lives. Michael has no motive, hey? I think it turns out that Michael loves Cool James. Man, imagine if Deep Blue Sea is a sequel to H2O. He quits being a private school security guard to become a chef at a fancy new underwater lab. And his reasoning is, killers can't catch me when I'm out on the water. But then Halloween H2, oh no! This new job created killer, genetically modified, sharks that want to kill him. Same color scheme as Michael. Oh, and in H2O when he's reading the romance novel script to his wife on the phone?
And when you have your back turned, we sneak out.
Ronnie, don't you get your ass fired with...
Don't you do me wrong, okay?
Yeah, it turns out that was his sassy foul-mouthed parrot from Deep Blue Sea.
Hey, there you dickhead! You got a big fat butt!
You know what, Bert? You were trying my last nerve. Don't make me drown your feathery ass.
What the fuck was I talking about? Oh yeah, Evil Dies Tonight.
Evil dies tonight.
Evil dies tonight!
Evil dies tonight!
Evil dies tonight!
I don't know what we're yelling about!
Evil dies tonight! Evil dies tonight! Evil dies tonight!
Loud noises!
But what I wanted from this soft reboot is what I thought the previous movie was setting up. I thought they were finally going to do something interesting with Michael. Guess we'll have to wait for the third one. But once again, it's all talk. It's all the characters gaslighting a fucking motive onto Michael.
He's a 6-year-old boy with the strength of a man and the mind of an animal.
I know, I've seen his face.
And this new addition of he would stand at his sister's window and stare at his own reflection. Cool. What does it mean?
And in that moment, all I could think was that inside that monster there was somebody's baby boy. But now I know. There's nothing inside that man but pure evil.
Turns out Laurie isn't special to Michael.
He's after me.
No, he's not. It was the doctor that took him to your house tonight. It's not about you.
Alright, so what was the point of the entire previous movie?
Michael's pursuit of Laurie's throat could be what keeps him alive.
Ah, there's a pursuit apparently.
I would suspect the notion of being a predator or the fear of becoming prey keeps both of them alive.
The 2018 movie does the Force Awakens gimmick, where it's been so many years later and it's quiet, a little too quiet. Michael did nothing after the first movie, and Laurie is now the Loomis crackpot. The setting of this movie probably would have worked if it was set a few months later. Let the previous one sink in that there's now been a second Halloween murder spree, and then the entire town can be like, holy shit, Michael is back to killing 40 years later. We gotta get ready like Laurie. Her Sarah Connoring her entire house wasn't crazy, it turns out.
He's after me.
No, he's not. It's not about you.
Do you want to know the truth about your parents? They're filthy junk traders who sold you off for drinking money. You have no place in this story. You come from nothing.
I mean, what, a couple people getting killed by one guy with a knife is not that big of a deal.
He's infected your family, he's infected my family with grief and fear for 40 years.
Dude, her grandmother was almost fucking murdered.
And she escaped, and they caught him, and now he's incarcerated.
Michael Myers has haunted this town for 40 years.
I'm just saying, like, by today's standards.
He is an apex predator.
It's like this script was just written for fan service. And now it's hilarious to me how much hate the Rob Zombie remake gets. That movie made the brother-sister connection work better. Even young Michael killed so many more people that would warrant him being such a danger. And even in its second movie delivered on him speaking. And now, after all this nostalgia blue-balling, they add this new element to Michael's character that is so underwhelming and frankly adds jack shit. We now have to wait for a third movie for all of this to be finally paid off. There's plenty of movies of Michael being a mindless killing machine with no motive. A reboot should do something different. 2 movies of same shit, different sequel. So what even will be next? Halloween Ends apparently is set 4 years later and includes COVID. They're including the global pandemic that happened since the first movie was made, which means it's going to be a different type of sequel, staying inside because of a virus. And whatever the original plan for Halloween Ends would have had to have been changed. But what even will be different? Jamie Lee Curtis said in an interview that fans might not like the third one because it changes everything up. Somehow I don't believe her, especially after referring to this movie as a masterpiece.
It's really,
I'm ready for it.
really, really, really intense. It's a masterpiece.
Oh, wow.
That's what I'm saying.
In fact, going off of how this movie has absolutely zero identity in terms of this entire franchise, I'm sure whatever shocking revelation about Michael's character in Halloween Ends will be the equivalent of this.
I'm pretty tired. Think I'll go home now.
Give us one little snippet or hint about Halloween Ends.
I can't. Okay, here's my snippet. Legacy.
Maybe the first Halloween movie? Oh, yeah, I named it.
Lori. When they arrested Michael that night, I was telling my wife that my daughter was killed. So I wasn't there to put a bullet in his brain like we should have.
You know, this makes me feel dirty every time I see article headlines that are like, movies that need the Halloween soft reboot treatment. This is the nightmare The Force Awakens has now established. You tease so much nostalgia, and then the entire movie is just porn for those 10 Easter eggs you may have missed YouTube channels. It's all for the point and clap generation. Did you point and clap at the season of the witch masks? Did you point and clap when Loomis ran on screen? Did you point and clap when the original characters showed up? The irony is this reboot series is just as faceless as Michael's mask. And I say, if you can watch an old movie and look past the fact that it's old, go watch Halloween 4. It shits all over this reboot series. And now world-renowned nostalgia panderer David Gordon Green had an Exorcist soft reboot trilogy confirmed before this reboot series even had a sequel. I love how these people just give themselves franchises before even proving themselves. He says writing the new Exorcist movies are tricky because it's a different type of process. Yeah, I guess it's easy to have story breaks of Michael killing people, in between characters vomiting nostalgia exposition. Therefore, it must be harder to write an Exorcist movie and have possessed people vomiting while characters are vomiting nostalgia exposition. They've already confirmed the original mother is returning, and that Linda Blair casting reveal is just around the corner for you to point and clap. Will this series ignore the original Exorcist 2 onwards? Will it include Exorcist 3 because it's popular and somehow shoehorn in Brad Dourif's Gemini Killer character? Fuck Malignant is a shit movie. I'm thankful to those of you who opened my eyes on how poorly written it was, had bad acting and characters you don't feel for, and fails at suspense. So glad this palate cleanser came along.
It needs to die.
And I'm the one that needs to kill it.
Two things I would have liked. The town to have genuinely beat the fuck out of Michael and chained him up in an underground cell like Jesse Pinkman. That would have at least kept me interested in the third movie. With all of this Laurie isn't special to Michael bullshit, the next time she squares off with him, imagine her holding his mask, then says, "Apparently I'm not important to you. Well, I'm sick of being a part of your fucking story," and then rips the mask in half. And then Michael, for the first time since Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, finally speaks. And what comes out of his mouth is, "Hey, I read on the internet that you're a hermaphrodite. Is that true?"
It fooled me. We can't get fooled again.